A racist officer violently pins a young black girl against a car, certain he can act without consequence. Bystanders film every second as the child cries out, while the officer's manner grows colder and more dismissive. Yet there is one detail he never bothers to learn: who her mother is. Before long, the footage reaches people he never expected, and the truth about her mother's work sets in motion a response he never saw coming. The metal of the patrol car had been baking beneath the summer sun for hours. When Officer Vance Harlan forced Tessa Rowe against it, heat punched through the thin cotton of her yellow t-shirt and burned the skin beneath her shoulder blade. Her cheek struck the rear passenger window. For a second, she could see her own reflection in the glass, wide brown eyes, one braid fallen across her face, tears she had not yet realized were there. "Please," she gasped, "you're hurting me." Harlan tightened his grip on her wrist. "Stop resisting." "I'm not resisting." She was 12 years old. She weighed 93 pounds. The only thing in her hand was a white paper pharmacy bag with a green logo printed across the front. One corner of the bag had folded beneath Harlan's palm. Inside it, a bottle of allergy tablets knocked against a second bottle containing a prescription for her mother. Around them, the intersection at Laurel Street and North Mercer Avenue seemed to hold its breath. A delivery driver stopped beside his open van. Two women outside a bakery turned toward the sound. A teenager on a bicycle put one foot on the pavement and pulled out his phone. "She's a child!" someone shouted. Harlan pressed his forearm more firmly across Tessa's upper back. "Everybody stay back," he called without looking around. "This is a lawful pedestrian stop." The teenager began recording. Only moments earlier, Tessa had been thinking about nothing more serious than whether the ice and the lemonade at home had melted. Westbridge, Maryland, was trapped beneath the kind of humid heat that made the sidewalks shimmer. Her mother had texted to say the prescriptions were ready at Bellwether Pharmacy. The pharmacy was 6 blocks from their row house on Linden Avenue. Tessa had made the same walk with her mother many times, and alone twice that summer. She reached the crossing. The white walking figure was already illuminated. The timer showed plenty of time remaining. She stepped off the curb. Harlan's patrol car came around the corner too fast. Its front tires crossed the thick white line and stopped halfway into the crosswalk. He struck the horn with the heel of his hand. Tessa jumped, nearly dropping the pharmacy bag, but the walk signal still gave her time. She moved around the nose of the car and continued toward the opposite curb. "Hey!" Harlan shouted through his open window. "You trying to get yourself killed?" Tessa stopped. Her heart was beating hard from the horn, but she looked at the signal and then back at him. "I had the light," she said. It was not defiance. It was the simple answer of a careful child who had been taught to look both ways, obey the signal, and speak clearly when an adult asked a question. Harlan heard something else. He shoved the transmission into park and opened his door. He was 38, broad through the chest, and already angry from a shift that had begun with a reprimand about incomplete reports. Sweat darkened the cloth beneath his body armor. He stepped into the crosswalk as if Tessa had summoned him there. "What did you say?" The walking sign was on. "Put your hands where I can see them." Tessa stared at him. "They are." She lifted the pharmacy bag a little higher. Her other hand hung open at her side. "Both hands, now. I'm just going home." "Turn around and face the vehicle." "Why?" The question changed his face. The irritation in his eyes hardened into certainty. Harlan had learned that certainty could conceal the absence of a reason. If he gave commands quickly enough, most people obeyed before asking whether he had the right to give them. "Because I told you to. Put the bag down and turn around." Tessa looked toward the bakery, perhaps searching for an adult who could explain what was happening. That was when Harlan reached for her. He caught her left wrist and pulled. The movement spun her half around. The pharmacy bag crushed between them and one of the bottles slipped through a tear in the paper and bounced beneath the patrol car. Tessa cried out. Harlan drove her shoulder against the rear door, placed his forearm across her back, and forced her downward. "Stop fighting me." "I'm not. I didn't do anything." Her knees buckled. Her right palm struck the glass as she tried to keep her face from hitting it again. The first witness to move closer was Elise Vargas, a nurse in her 50s who had stepped out of the bakery with a box of cupcakes for her grandson. She set the box on the sidewalk and held both hands where Harlan could see them. "Officer, she isn't resisting," Elise said. "I watched the whole thing. She had the walk signal." "Back up! She's crying. Let go of her arm. Back up now, or you will be detained." Elise stopped, but she did not leave. Beside her, the teenager with the bicycle moved closer to the curb and held his phone horizontally. His name was Keon Hale. He was 16, and his summer job at a hardware store had taught him to read names from uniforms and receipts carefully. "Officer Vance Harlan," he said for the recording. "Westbridge Police Department, badge number 417, Laurel and North Mercer." Harlan turned his head. The pressure on Tessa's back did not ease. "Put that phone away." "I'm on a public sidewalk. You're interfering with an investigation." "What investigation?" More phones appeared. A man inside the delivery van recorded through his windshield. One of the bakery employees came outside. A driver stopped at the red light and pointed her camera through the passenger window. Each new lens made Harlan more aware that he was being observed. But instead of calming him, the attention made him perform authority more aggressively. "This subject entered traffic without regard for an emergency vehicle," he announced. "She refused multiple lawful commands and became physically resistant." "That's not true," Tessa sobbed. "The light said I could walk." "Be quiet. My mom is going to know." Harlan gave a short, humorless laugh. "I'm sure your mother thinks you never do anything wrong. She'll know what to do. Everybody says that when they get caught." From beneath the patrol car, the prescription bottle rolled into view. The white label faced the crowd. Elise saw the name before Harlan did. "Camille Rowe," she read aloud. "Officer, those are prescription medicines. You need to get them out of the street." Harlan glanced down and then back toward Tessa. The name meant nothing to him. He had never met Camille Rowe. He did not know her face. He did not know that years earlier she had stood in a federal courtroom and helped convict 2 correctional officers for beating a restrained prisoner. He did not know that her entire career had been built around the details officers like him assumed nobody would preserve. "She can pick them up when I'm done," he said. "Done with what?" Elise demanded. Harlan ignored her. He asked Tessa for her name, address, and date of birth. She answered through tears. When she stumbled over the day of the month, he accused her of giving false information. Tessa repeated it more slowly. He called the information to dispatch, describing her as a combative juvenile who had created a traffic hazard. The dispatcher asked whether medical assistance was needed. "Negative," Harlan said. Elise's voice rose from behind him. "She said her shoulder hurts." "No medical assistance," Harlan repeated. The walk signal changed twice while he held Tessa against the car. Vehicles waited through a green light because the patrol car blocked part of the intersection. Tessa could feel sweat running from her hairline into her eye. The door scorched her skin. She tried to turn her face enough to breathe without pressing her mouth to the glass. At last, the radio crackled with confirmation that no warrants or missing person alerts were associated with her name. Harlan released her wrist, but only after pushing it once more against the door, as if to remind everyone that he controlled the moment. Tessa staggered backward and clutched her left arm to her chest. "Pick up your stuff," he said. "Go home and learn how to behave when a police officer speaks to you." Elise stepped forward. "You owe that child an ambulance and an apology. This contact is over. Clear the area." Harlan bent, retrieved the prescription bottle, and dropped it into the torn bag. He did not notice that Kian's camera captured the label, the time displayed on the pedestrian signal, and the red mark already forming around Tessa's wrist. "Can you call my mom?" Tessa asked Elise. "Of course, sweetheart. Do you know her number?" Tessa nodded, but fear had emptied familiar numbers from her memory. Her own phone was at home, charging on the kitchen counter. Harlan stood beside the patrol car, writing in a small notebook. She looked at him and shook her head. "I just want to go home." Elise offered to walk with her. Tessa refused at first because her mother had taught her not to leave with strangers. Elise respected that. She gave Tessa her full name and phone number on the back of the bakery receipt, then followed at a distance of half a block, close enough to help and far enough not to frighten her. Kian posted a short clip before Tessa had reached Linden Avenue. His caption read, "Westbridge cop pins 12-year-old girl to hot car after he blocked crosswalk." The first person to share it was his older sister. Then a teacher recognized Tessa from Westbridge Middle School. Before long, the clip appeared in a neighborhood safety group. Soon after, someone uploaded Elise's longer video from a second angle. A local reporter saved both clips to her phone. Tessa turned the key to her house and stepped inside. Camille Rowe was at the dining room table working remotely on a sentencing memorandum. She heard the door close, then the ragged sound of a child trying not to cry loudly. By the time she reached the hall, Tessa had slid down the wall beneath the family photographs. "Baby!" Camille dropped to her knees. Tessa held up the torn pharmacy bag as if it were proof of a failure. "I lost one of the pills. I think one fell out. I'm sorry." "Forget the medicine. Look at me." One side of Tessa's face was red. Her left shoulder sat lower than the right. Finger-shaped marks darkened around her wrist. Camille's first emotion was terror. Rage arrived behind it, hot and immediate. But training held both emotions away from her voice. She did not ask what the officer had done to her. She did not ask whether he had slammed her into a car. Leading questions could reshape memory, especially when a frightened child wanted to give a parent the answer she expected. Instead, Camille placed both hands on the floor where Tessa could see them. "You are safe now," she said. "Take your time and tell me what happened from the beginning." The story came in fragments. Bellwether Pharmacy, the walk signal, the horn, the command to show her hands, the sudden grip, the heat of the door, a man telling her she was resisting when she could barely move. "Did you ever pull away from him?" "I tried to keep my face off the window." "Did you touch him?" "No." "Did he tell you that you were under arrest?" "No." "Did he tell you why he was holding you?" Tessa shook her head. "He just kept saying I had to listen." Camille breathed through her nose and counted once to 5. She was 41 years old, an assistant United States attorney in the District of Maryland, and for nearly 9 years she had prosecuted civil rights violations committed under color of law. She knew what unnecessary force looked like. She knew what a false official narrative sounded like while it was being assembled. Most of all, she knew that being right was not the same as being ready to prove it. Her phone vibrated on the table. Then it vibrated again and again. She helped Tessa onto the sofa, brought her water, and placed a cold pack inside a dish towel. Only after Tessa's breathing slowed did Camille look at the screen. There were 17 missed calls. The newest message had come from an unfamiliar number. "Is this your daughter?" Beneath the question was a link. Camille opened it with the volume low. She watched Harlan seize Tessa's wrist. She watched her daughter's knees fold beneath pressure from his arm. She heard Tessa cry, "You're hurting me," and heard Harlan answer, "Stop resisting." Camille watched the video twice. On the third viewing, she stopped being only Tessa's mother and began thinking like a lawyer, though she hated herself for needing to make that decision. The clip had an upload time, but not necessarily the original recording time. The platform could compress the image and remove useful metadata. Comments could identify witnesses, but could also contaminate recollections. Other footage might exist and disappear. The patrol car camera could show the signal. Harlan's body camera could contain words spoken before the first witness began filming. Dispatch logs would establish when he called in the stop and what justification he gave. Nearby businesses might overwrite security video within a day or two. She took photographs of Tessa's face, shoulder, wrist, and the torn pharmacy bag. She placed the bag and both prescription bottles in a clean paper grocery sack without wiping them. She wrote down the time Tessa arrived. Then she called the pediatrician's office and said her daughter needed to be examined after an encounter involving physical force. "Are you calling the police?" Tessa asked. Camille sat beside her. "I'm calling people whose job is to make sure the police don't get to investigate themselves." "Are you going to arrest him?" "No, I can't. And I won't be the prosecutor on this case. You're my daughter. That means another office has to make the decisions." "Then what can you do?" Camille took her hand carefully, avoiding the bruised wrist. "I can make sure the truth doesn't disappear." Camille called her supervisor, United States Attorney Vivian Cross. She spoke carefully, beginning with the conflict before describing the facts. "My daughter was subjected to force by a Westbridge officer less than 90 minutes ago," Camille said. "Videos are circulating publicly. I am reporting it as a parent, not requesting a particular charging decision. I need to be screened from any investigation that follows." Vivian was silent for one beat. "Is Tessa safe?" "She's conscious. Her shoulder and wrist are injured. I'm taking her to the doctor now." "Do that first. I will contact the Civil Rights Division and the FBI field office. Do not call anyone at Westbridge Police yourself." "I wasn't planning to." "I know, I had to say it." Camille understood. Every choice she made would eventually be examined by defense lawyers, reporters, and perhaps a jury. If she used her position to demand special treatment, Harlan's attorneys would say the investigation was political retaliation. If she did nothing, evidence might vanish. The lawful path between those risks was narrow, but it existed. Vivian placed an immediate ethical screen around Camille. No one in Camille's regular civil rights unit could discuss the case with her. Case decisions would be referred to prosecutors from the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division in Washington, assisted by agents who had never worked with Camille on a prior investigation. Camille would be treated as Tessa's parent and a reporting witness, nothing more. At the Pediatric Urgent Care Center, Dr. Sophia Lang documented swelling in Tessa's left wrist, bruising along the shoulder, and a mild abrasion near her cheekbone. X-rays showed no fracture. The absence of broken bones brought Camille relief, but it did not erase what had happened. Dr. Long spoke directly to Tessa. "Pain can get worse overnight. You may also feel jumpy or have trouble sleeping. None of that means you are weak. It means your body remembers being scared." Tessa nodded. "Can I still go to basketball camp?" "Let's let the shoulder rest this weekend. Then we'll decide." That question nearly broke Camille. Her daughter was measuring the assault against basketball camp because 12-year-old life was supposed to be made of summer plans, not evidence logs and federal interviews. While they waited for discharge papers, a television mounted near the ceiling changed to the evening news. The anchor introduced developing video from downtown Westbridge. Tessa's cry came through the speakers before Camille could reach the remote. Tessa covered her ears. "Turn it off," Camille said. A nurse did so immediately. The story was no longer theirs alone. Across town, Westbridge Police Chief Harlan Crow watched the same broadcast from a conference room at headquarters. Vance Harlan sat at the far end of the table beside Sergeant Reed Colton, his union representative. The public information officer had already drafted a 3-sentence statement saying the department was aware of an edited social media clip involving a juvenile pedestrian and had begun an internal review. Edited, Chief Crow said. Do we know that? The public information officer shifted in her chair. All social media videos are edited to some degree. That is not an answer. Harlan leaned forward. The kid stepped in front of my unit. I got out to identify her. She refused commands, became combative, and I used control pressure. No strikes, no cuffs, no injury. Was your body camera on? It should have activated when I opened the door. Should have. I haven't reviewed it. Chief Crow looked at the Internal Affairs lieutenant. Secure the camera. Secure the vehicle. Nobody overwrites, exports, clips, or annotates anything until counsel gives a protocol. Harlan's jaw tightened. This is becoming a show because of who her mother is. Crow looked up. Who is her mother? Sergeant Colton turned his phone around. On the screen was Camille's professional biography from the Department of Justice website. Assistant United States Attorney, he said. Civil rights prosecutions. For the first time since the encounter, certainty left Harlan's face. That doesn't change what happened. No, Crow replied. The video will decide what happened. Harlan had spent years believing that video began when a camera noticed him. His body camera told a different story. The preservation request arrived at Westbridge headquarters soon after. It covered the original body camera file and its audit history, dash camera footage, automatic vehicle location data, dispatch audio, computer-aided dispatch entries, mobile data terminal messages, radio transmissions, use of force reports, personnel records, relevant to prior force complaints, and all policies governing juvenile contacts and pedestrian stops. Separate notices went to Bellwether Pharmacy, the bakery, the city traffic office, and 3 businesses facing the intersection. The notice was not a search warrant and did not assume guilt. It was a legal command not to destroy material that could become evidence. Kean Hale received a call from FBI Special Agent Amara Quinn. Kean's mother listened on speakerphone while Agent Quinn explained that she wanted the original file, not a version downloaded from social media. Kean agreed to preserve his phone and export the video without trimming it. Elise Vargas received a similar call. So did the delivery driver and the woman who had recorded from her car. The Westbridge Police Department announced that Harlan had been placed on administrative leave. The statement asked the public to avoid rushing to judgment and called the encounter an evolving internal personnel matter. Elise's full video reached a local station. It was several minutes long. It showed the white pedestrian symbol illuminated as Tessa entered the road. It showed Harlan's patrol car cross the stop line and block the crosswalk. It captured Elise telling him that Tessa had the signal. It captured his refusal of medical assistance after Tessa complained of pain. Most damagingly, it showed that Tessa's hands were visible before he gave the first command. The station aired the uncut sequence. By evening, the mayor's office had received more than 2,000 emails. The first version of Harlan's report appeared in the internal system. He wrote that an unidentified juvenile suddenly entered the path of a marked emergency vehicle, that she concealed her hands near an unknown bag, and that she attempted to pull away while refusing repeated commands. He added that he used minimal guiding contact and observed no complaint of pain or visible injury. The report had a problem beyond its contradictions. Harlan wrote it after he knew multiple videos existed. Sergeant Colton called him. "Do not submit anything else," Colton said. "You need counsel. It's accurate. Then let counsel review the evidence before you create more evidence." "I know what I saw." Trent Vance. "That's not what I'm worried about." At the row home, Camille had turned off every television. Tessa sat in bed wearing an oversized Westbridge Wildcats t-shirt, an ice pack balanced on her shoulder. She asked whether the officer knew where they lived. Camille checked every lock before answering. "He is not allowed to contact us, but he asked my address. That was recorded. There are people watching this now. People were watching when he did it." Camille had no comforting answer to that. She stayed beside Tessa until the child's breathing deepened. Then she moved to the hallway outside the bedroom and cried without sound. For years, she had told juries that official power became dangerous when it was separated from accountability. She had believed every word. Believing it in a courtroom had not prepared her to see its weight leave marks on her daughter's skin. Her phone displayed hundreds of messages. Some offered love. Some demanded interviews. Some accused her of sending Tessa into the street to create a case. A stranger had posted their home address before the platform removed it. Camille forwarded the threat-related messages to Agent Quinn and stopped reading. Vivian Cross called with an update. "The files are being preserved. Amara Quinn will lead the initial fact-gathering. A child forensic interviewer will speak with Tessa tomorrow. If you consent, you will not be in the interview room." "I consent. There is something else. We have reason to believe the body camera file exists. Nobody has reviewed it outside the evidence unit yet." "Good. Camille, listen to me. You need to be her mother tonight. Let us do the rest." Camille looked through the doorway at Tessa, sleeping with one hand curled beneath her chin. "I am trying." The next morning, Westbridge woke beneath a sky the color of dull steel. The heat had not broken, but a thunderstorm threatened beyond the Chesapeake. Crowds stood outside police headquarters holding signs. Some carried Tessa's name. Others carried the names of people whose complaints against Westbridge officers had never been sustained. The crowd made Tessa uneasy, even though most people had come to support her. Camille kept her away from the windows when news helicopters passed overhead. Agent Quinn arrived with Dr. Nora Ellington, a forensic interviewer trained to speak with children after traumatic events. Quinn was in her mid-40s, patient and precise. She did not wear a visible weapon inside the row home. "You can stop at any time," Dr. Ellington told Tessa. "If you don't understand a question, tell me. If I say something wrong, correct me." The interview took place in a quiet room at a child advocacy center, not at a police station. Camille watched through one-way glass with a victim specialist. Dr. Ellington began with Tessa's school, basketball, and favorite graphic novels. Only after establishing how Tessa described ordinary memories did she ask about the intersection. Tessa's account remained consistent. She remembered the walking figure and the countdown. She remembered Harlan's hand around her wrist. She remembered the bottle rolling beneath the car. She remembered trying to keep her face from touching the window because the glass was hot. "What did you think would happen?" Dr. Ellington asked. Tessa looked down at her hands. "I thought if I moved, he might hurt me more. But when I didn't move, he kept saying I was fighting. I didn't know what he wanted me to do." Camille closed her eyes. After the interview, Agent Quinn photographed the bruises again because their color had deepened overnight. She collected the pharmacy bag and bottles with Camille's consent, logging each item on an evidence form. She also took the bakery receipt containing Elise's contact information. "You did exactly the right thing by keeping this," Quinn told Tessa. "I didn't do anything. Miss Elise gave it to me. You brought it home. That matters." At headquarters, technicians copied Harlan's body camera file using a method that preserved its original hash value and audit trail. The footage began the moment Harlan opened his patrol car door. The video showed Tessa already inside the marked crosswalk under an active walk signal. It recorded him muttering, "Not today," before confronting her. The audio caught every command and response. Tessa never threatened him. She never concealed her hands. She never tried to flee. When she asked why she had to face the vehicle, Harlan whispered a phrase the bystander videos had not captured clearly. Kids like you learn the hard way. Later, as he pressed her against the car and witnesses protested, he said under his breath, "They always make a scene." The pronoun mattered. So did the tone. Neither phrase alone proved racial intent, but both became relevant when placed beside his history. That history began arriving in boxes. Harlan had been a Westbridge officer for 11 years. During that time, citizens had filed 14 complaints naming him. 9 involved black residents. 5 alleged unnecessary force. 3 described him using nearly identical language, furtive movement, aggressive posture, or failure to obey clear verbal commands. Only 1 complaint had been sustained, and that was for failing to activate his body camera during a traffic stop. The discipline had been a written warning. Years earlier, Harlan had stopped 17-year-old Omar Langston outside a convenience store. Harlan reported that Omar matched the description of a burglary suspect and reached toward his waistband. Omar said he had been pulling out his school identification. During the detention, Harlan twisted the teenager's arm behind his back until the shoulder dislocated. No burglary had occurred in that neighborhood. The suspect description cited in Harlan's report came from an incident 3 miles away and mentioned an adult wearing a red jacket. Omar was a teenager in a gray school uniform. The department cleared Harlan after an internal investigation lasting 12 days. The city later paid Omar's family $180,000. The settlement included a confidentiality clause that barred the family from discussing its terms, though it could not lawfully prevent them from reporting possible crimes or cooperating with investigators. Local reporter Serena Blake had covered the city council vote approving that payment. She remembered that the case file had been unusually thin. She called Camille. "I know you are not handling the investigation," Serena said. "I am not asking for inside information. I want you to know this officer has been here before." Camille recorded Serena's name and number, then immediately referred her to Agent Quinn. "I can't discuss the case," Camille said. "But please preserve whatever you have in its original form." "There are other families," Serena replied. "I think the city made each one believe they were alone." She was right. Before long, Agent Quinn's team had identified 6 former complainants willing to be interviewed. They did not all describe identical encounters. One had been stopped while walking home from a night shift. Another had been pulled from a car after questioning why Harlan wanted to search it. A third was a college student whom Harlan detained outside his own apartment building because a neighbor had reported a suspicious person near the mailboxes. What the accounts shared was a sequence. Harlan began with a minor or undefined suspicion. When the person asked for a reason, he treated the question as resistance. He escalated his commands until obedience became physically difficult. Then he described the confusion he had created as evidence of danger. The pattern was not enough by itself to prove what had happened to Tessa, but it changed the questions investigators asked. They requested Harlan's pedestrian stops and traffic stops from the previous 5 years. Westbridge stored much of that information in separate systems, some modern and some badly outdated. Data analyst Anika Patel spent 2 days cleaning duplicate records, matching incident numbers, and comparing Harlan with officers assigned to the same districts and shifts. The preliminary results were stark. Black residents made up 38% of the population in the areas Harlan usually patrolled. They accounted for nearly 71% of his discretionary stops. His rate of consent searches was more than twice the rate of comparable officers. Yet those searches found contraband less often, not more often. He also used vague phrases such as "appeared nervous" and "made furtive movements" far more frequently than his peers. Statistics could not read a man's mind. They could, however, expose choices repeated too often to look accidental. Anika found something else. In 12 reports involving force or a contested search, Harlan had copied entire sentences from earlier reports. The wording was not merely similar. It was identical, including the same misplaced comma after the phrase, "for officer safety." In 4 cases, he claimed that a subject looked repeatedly toward an escape route. The reports named different locations, but the sentence describing the behavior never changed. "He isn't documenting what he observes," Anika told Agent Quinn. "He's selecting language that has survived review before." The investigators traced who had approved those reports. Sergeant Reed Colton's name appeared again and again. Westbridge city leaders held a news conference. Mayor Helena Voss stood behind a row of microphones with Chief Crow at her right. She called the video deeply disturbing and promised a transparent review. When a reporter asked why Harlan had remained on street duty after 14 complaints and a costly settlement, Crow said personnel law prevented him from discussing prior allegations. "Were you aware of those allegations?" Serena Blake called from the second row. "The department reviews every complaint under established policy." "That was not the question." Crow ended the conference 4 minutes later. Tessa watched a recording from the sofa. The swelling in her wrist had begun to recede, but the bruise on her shoulder was now purple at the center. Her teammates had filled a paper bag with cards, candy, and a small foam basketball covered in signatures. She appreciated them and hated that they existed. "They keep saying my name," she told Camille. "Do you want me to ask the stations not to use it? It's already everywhere. That doesn't mean you owe anyone your face or your voice. If I don't talk, will people think I'm lying?" Camille set aside her laptop. "You are not responsible for convincing strangers. You told the truth to the investigators. The videos show what happened. You are allowed to be 12. Tessa looked at the cards. "Kian talked on television. Kian chose to. You get to choose too." For the first time since the encounter, Tessa smiled faintly. "Can my choice be no?" "Absolutely." The smile vanished almost as quickly. "I don't want to cross North Mercer again." "Then we won't. Not yet." Camille arranged trauma counseling with a therapist who worked with children. During the first session, Tessa drew the intersection from above. The patrol car was a black rectangle blocking the white crossing lines. Every bystander was represented by a small blue circle holding a phone. She drew herself so tiny that she nearly disappeared beside the vehicle. "Why is everyone else blue?" the therapist asked. "Because the phones made them feel like one person," Tessa said. "Like one big person who could see him." "Did that make you feel safer?" Tessa considered it. Later, not while it was happening. At police headquarters, the internal mood shifted from defensive to frightened. Federal investigators had not accused the department as a whole of criminal conduct, but preservation requests expanded. City attorneys ordered personnel not to delete emails or text messages related to Harlan, use-of-force complaints, settlement agreements, or the Roe incident. Captain Isabel Mora, who had supervised internal affairs years earlier, read the notice twice. She had been transferred to administrative services after repeatedly objecting to the way complaint findings were softened before reaching the chief. Mora contacted Agent Quinn through counsel. They met in a federal building conference room. Mora brought no stolen files and made no claim she could not support. She brought dates, case numbers, and an account of how the system worked. Investigators, she explained, often began with a proposed finding based on interviews and video. Cases involving favored officers then moved through a review meeting attended by command staff and a city labor attorney. Words changed. Not justified became policy unclear. Inconsistent statement became insufficient evidence. If no policy section addressed the precise conduct, commanders treated that gap as permission rather than to improve the policy. Was Harlan favored? Quinn asked. He made arrests, answered calls, and volunteered for overtime. His supervisors described him as proactive. What did proactive mean? high stop numbers, high search numbers. He produced statistics that looked like productivity if nobody asked who was being stopped or what those stops accomplished. Mora identified the Omar Langston file. Her original recommendation had found Harlan's force unnecessary and his stated suspicion unsupported. The final determination changed the complaint to not sustained. The page containing her analysis was removed from the packet sent to the Civilian Review Board. "Who removed it?" Quinn asked. "I cannot prove who physically removed the page. I can prove I submitted it. The document management system should show the version history." That system had an archive function. Command staff seemed to have forgotten. The audit log showed that Mora uploaded a 27-page report. Later that afternoon, Sergeant Colton downloaded it. The next day, a 24-page version was uploaded under the same case number. The missing pages contained the force analysis, a map showing the burglary call occurred outside Harlan's patrol zone, and a recommendation for discipline. Agent Quinn obtained legal process for Colton's department email and relevant work device communications. A message from Harlan sent years earlier read, "Need the Langston write-up to land clean. The kid's family already has a lawyer." Colton replied, "Use the standard movement language. Keep emotion out. I'll fix the rest." The message did not prove a broad conspiracy, but it gave investigators a reason to examine whether Harlan had expected supervisors to protect him. Colton sat for an interview with his attorney present. He called standard movement language a reference to accurate professional terminology. "Did you remove Captain Mora's analysis?" Quinn asked. "No. Did you know it was removed?" "Not at the time." "What did you mean by 'I'll fix the rest'?" "Grammar and formatting." 3 pages of grammar and formatting disappeared. Colton ended the interview. Harlan declined an interview altogether. That was his right, and investigators did not treat the decision as evidence of guilt. His own recorded words and written report remained evidence, however, and his report was becoming impossible to reconcile with the footage. The traffic department supplied the electronic timing record for the signal at Laurel and North Mercer. When Tessa stepped into the crosswalk, the pedestrian phase had 17 seconds remaining. Harlan's patrol car crossed the stop line 3 seconds later. Vehicle location data showed he had accelerated around the corner and braked sharply. He was not responding to an emergency call. His lights and siren were off. Bellwether Pharmacy provided a receipt time-stamped only minutes before the encounter, proving Tessa had left the store shortly before. Its exterior camera showed her walking calmly toward the intersection with the bag in her right hand. A bakery camera captured the entire crossing from above. From that angle, there was no possibility that she had leaped into traffic or hidden her hands. Every independent clock told the same story. Harlan's official report told another. Exactly 1 week after the encounter, the city placed Harlan on unpaid suspension and ordered him to surrender his badge, service weapon, department identification, and access credentials. 2 officers went to his home to collect the equipment. A television camera recorded him watching from behind a curtain as they carried the locked weapons case to their vehicle. The department also reassigned Colton and restricted his access to internal databases. Harlan's attorney, Barrett Quinn, held a news conference outside his office. "Officer Harlan made a split-second decision in a dangerous traffic environment," Quinn said. "A short video cannot convey the totality of what an experienced officer perceived. This case has been distorted by the professional position of the child's mother and by political pressure from social media." The statement reached Tessa during therapy. She asked Camille what totality meant. "It means the whole situation," Camille explained. "But the whole video is longer than his report." "Yes, and I'm still 12 in the whole situation." "Yes, you are." "Then why does he keep talking like I was dangerous?" Camille wished legal experience had given her a better answer. because admitting what he did would require him to see you as a person before he sees himself as an officer. Some people will protect the story they tell about themselves, even when it hurts someone else. Tessa pressed the cold pack against her shoulder. Does he believe his story? Maybe, but believing something does not make it true. That evening, a fourth video surfaced. The person who recorded it had been sitting in a parked car across the street and did not realize until later that her phone captured Harlan after Tessa walked away. He stood beside the patrol car and spoke to someone on his personal phone. "Little girl pulled the mom card," he said. "Whole crowd acted like I was arresting the governor." He laughed. "She'll be fine. They always are once the camera comes out." The video changed public anger into something colder. It showed not a man shaken by a difficult encounter, but a man certain the child's pain would carry no consequence. It also established that Harlan used his personal phone immediately afterward. Investigators obtained a warrant limited to communications relevant to the incident and the preparation of official records. The search revealed a message he sent to Colton shortly after the stop. Got a loud juvenile stop about to hit socials. No cuffs, minimal contact. Needed classified pedestrian assist. Colton replied minutes later. Write the commands first. Mention hands and traffic. Don't watch clips until report is in. Harlan had not followed the last instruction. His browsing history showed he opened Kian's video more than an hour before submitting his report. The statement that he had not observed a complaint of pain was written after he had watched Tessa say, "You're hurting me," on his phone. The investigation was no longer about a questionable split-second judgment alone. It was also about what Harlan did after he had time to think. Federal Prosecutor Julian Park was assigned from the Civil Rights Division to lead the case. He had never met Camille before and asked that every communication with her occur through the Victim Witness Coordinator whenever possible. His caution frustrated Camille and reassured her at the same time. Park met Camille in a neutral conference room. "I need you to understand the difference between public outrage and admissible proof," he said. "I do. I know you do professionally. I need to say it to you as a parent." Section 242 requires proof that he willfully deprived Tessa of a constitutional right while acting under color of law. Bad judgment is not enough. Negligence is not enough. The jury has to find willfulness beyond a reasonable doubt. What do you have? I can't brief you on grand jury material. I can tell you the investigation is active, substantial, and independent of your office. Camille studied him. Then why are we meeting? Because Tessa may have to testify one day. I want her to have support without anyone promising an outcome. I have promised her none. Good. Keep doing that. Outside the conference room, Tessa sat with Agent Quinn, drawing tiny cartoon faces on a yellow legal pad. When Camille joined her, Tessa closed the pad. Did they decide? Not yet. How long does truth take? Sometimes longer than it should. The video only took 73 seconds. Camille sat beside her. A video can show what happened. A court has to decide what the law can prove about why it happened. That's harder. Much harder. Is that why you always work late? Camille smiled despite herself. That is one reason. Annika Patel completed the comparative stop analysis. Independent statisticians reviewed her methods. The numbers alone would not decide a criminal case, but they supported a broader administrative inquiry into the department. The State Attorney General announced a pattern and practice review of Westbridge police policies, supervision, and complaint handling. The City Council voted unanimously to hire outside auditors and release settlement totals from the previous decade. Chief Crow appeared before the council under oath. He admitted that he had been briefed on the Omar Langston complaint, but claimed he had never seen Mora's missing analysis. Council members displayed the document audit trail on large monitors. Your office opened the shortened file 3 times. Councilwoman Lena Castillo said. My staff may have accessed it on my behalf. Did you ask why a child with a dislocated shoulder was described as uninjured in the initial report? I relied on Internal Affairs. Internal Affairs recommended discipline. Crow had no answer. He resigned the following morning, saying his departure would allow the city to rebuild trust. The statement did not mention Tessa, Omar, or Captain Mora. At noon, a city worker removed Crow's nameplate from the chief's office door. By afternoon, people had placed flowers and handwritten notes outside the row home. Camille asked supporters to deliver future items to a community center instead. She wanted her address to become a home again, not a landmark. That night, Tessa stood in the kitchen while Camille prepared grilled cheese sandwiches. Did I make the chief quit? She asked. Camille turned off the burner. No. The choices adults made before you ever walked to the pharmacy caused that. The video made people look at those choices. If it happened to Omar before me, why didn't people look then? Some people did. They weren't given the information or power they needed. Because his mom wasn't you. The question landed where Camille's pride and guilt had been fighting for days. Maybe that is part of it, she said. And if the system only listens when a victim knows someone with a title, then the system is failing. Your case has to matter because you are a person, not because of my job. But your job helped. Yes. It helped me know which evidence to protect and whom to call. Every mother should have a number she can call. Every child should be believed enough for the evidence to be saved. Tessa looked down at the sandwich on her plate. Then make that part better too. It was the first demand she had made since the encounter. Camille nodded. We will try. 2 weeks after the afternoon at Laurel and North Mercer, a federal grand jury returned a 3-count indictment against Vance Harlan. The first count alleged that while acting under color of law, he willfully deprived Tessa Rowe of her right to be free from unreasonable seizure. The second alleged willful use of unreasonable force, resulting in bodily injury. The third charged obstruction through the creation of a materially false report intended to influence a foreseeable federal investigation. The state filed separate charges of second-degree assault and misconduct in office. State prosecutors agreed to coordinate their schedule without interfering with the federal case. An indictment was an accusation, not a conviction. Julian Park repeated that distinction at every opportunity. The evidence had cleared an important threshold, but the presumption of innocence remained. For Tessa, the legal language mattered less than the sight of 2 federal agents arriving at Harlan's home shortly after sunrise. Harlan surrendered without incident. He wore a gray suit to his initial appearance and stood between 2 defense attorneys while a magistrate judge read the charges. He was released pending trial under strict conditions. He had to surrender all personally owned firearms, avoid contact with Tessa, Camille, and the witnesses, remain within the court's jurisdiction, and perform no law enforcement duties. Outside the courthouse, reporters packed the sidewalk behind metal barriers. Camille had resisted making a public statement during the investigation. Now, with Tessa's agreement, she stepped toward the microphones. Tessa stood beside her in a navy dress, holding her mother's hand. "We are grateful to the witnesses who chose not to look away," Camille said. "We are grateful to the investigators who followed the evidence. An indictment is not a verdict, and we respect the process ahead. This is not about revenge, it is about accountability. No child's safety should depend on her parent's profession, and no officer should believe a badge places his actions beyond the law." She took no questions. As they walked back toward the car, Tessa looked up at her. Was that the right thing to say? It was the true thing. Is he going to prison now? Not now. Maybe not ever. A jury will have to decide whether the government proves the charges. Tessa frowned. I saw what he did. Everybody saw. I know. But the court has rules because power can hurt people when it moves without proof. even when the person accused is someone we believe hurt us. That sounds like protecting him. Today, it protects him. On another day, those same rules may protect someone who has nobody powerful on their side. Justice has to be careful enough to do both. Tessa was quiet until they reached the car. I still want them to believe me. So do I. The months before trial moved unevenly. Public attention rose whenever a new filing appeared, then drifted toward other stories. Tessa returned to school. For the first week, students stared at her in the hallway. Some treated her like a celebrity. Others repeated things they had heard adults say online. One boy asked whether her mother was going to shut down the whole police department. Tessa told him her mother could not even make her clean her room without asking twice. The joke traveled through the 7th grade and helped her become herself again. Recovery was not a straight line. A sudden siren could freeze her in place. She stopped wearing the yellow t-shirt because the smell of sun-warmed cotton brought back the patrol car door. When a school resource officer entered the cafeteria, she spilled her milk, trying to stand too quickly. Therapy gave those reactions names and gave her tools to meet them. She practiced placing both feet on the floor, identifying 5 things she could see, and breathing slowly enough to remind her body that memory was not danger. Camille attended some sessions and waited outside for others. The city created a youth civilian contact policy requiring officers to state the reason for a stop as soon as safety allowed, notify a guardian promptly, and summon medical evaluation when a child complained of injury after force. Officers received clearer restrictions on detaining pedestrians for minor traffic issues. A new evidence rule prevented complaint investigators from replacing original findings without preserving the full version history. Those policies did not heal Tessa's shoulder or erase the video. They did make it harder for the next report to vanish. Captain Isabel Mora became interim director of the reorganized Professional Standards Bureau. She accepted only after the City Council granted the Bureau independent authority to publish quarterly complaint data. Omar Langston and his mother joined a community advisory panel. Kyan Hale received a Civic Courage Award, which embarrassed him more than any attention at school ever had. Sergeant Colton was charged separately with obstruction and falsification related to the old Langston investigation. He eventually agreed to plead guilty to a state records offense and cooperate in the administrative review. He admitted advising Harlan to use language that would frame Tessa's behavior as threatening before reviewing objective evidence. He denied knowing Harlan would submit a false report, a claim prosecutors would later challenge with his messages. Harlan's attorneys filed motions to exclude the stop statistics, prior complaints, Colton's messages, and the video recorded after Tessa left. Some arguments succeeded. The judge ruled that allegations never proven could not be used merely to suggest Harlan was a bad person, likely to act badly again. Other evidence could be admitted for narrower purposes, including proof of intent, absence of mistake, and the preparation of the official report. The jury would not hear every terrible story the public had heard. Camille respected the rulings, even when they frustrated her. A criminal trial was not a referendum on Harlan's entire life. It would decide whether the government proved the charged conduct toward Tessa and the alleged cover-up. Jury selection began in federal court in Baltimore. Winter rain struck the courthouse windows. Tessa was 13 now. She had grown half an inch and cut her braids to shoulder length. Julian Park met with her twice before testimony. He never told her what words to use. "If you don't remember something, say you don't remember," he said. "If I ask a confusing question, tell me. If the defense asks a question with something wrong inside it, correct it. What if they say I'm lying? They may challenge your memory. That is part of their job. Your job is not to win an argument. Your job is to answer honestly." "Can Mom sit where I can see her?" The court allowed Camille to sit in the first row. but the judge warned her not to signal, react, or communicate with Tessa while she testified. "Your mother will be there," Park said, "but you will be the person telling the story." The government's opening statement began with the walk signal. "This case started with 19 seconds of permission," Park told the jury. A white figure appeared on a traffic signal telling a child she could cross. Officer Harlan turned his own mistake in the crosswalk into a confrontation, then turned the child's fear into a justification. When the evidence contradicted him, he wrote a report designed to contradict the evidence. Defense attorney Barrett Quinn urged jurors not to judge a dangerous street encounter through the calm perspective of a courtroom. "Police officers make decisions in seconds," he said. "A sudden pedestrian, an unknown bag, a non-compliant subject, and a gathering crowd created a fluid situation." Officer Harlan used a brief control hold, released the juvenile, and made no arrest. The government has converted imperfect policing into a federal crime because a video became politically explosive. The first witnesses established the physical setting. A traffic engineer explained the signal timing. The pharmacy clerk authenticated the receipt. A vehicle system specialist mapped the patrol car's speed and location. Dr. Lang described Tessa's injuries without exaggeration. Then Keon testified. He wore a borrowed jacket and answered every question with the same care he had used when reading Harlan's badge aloud. Park played the original video from Keon's phone. The courtroom heard Tessa cry. Harlan looked down at the defense table. Quinn asked Keon whether online attention had made him famous. "No," Keon said. "You received an award, correct?" "Yes." "You were interviewed on television one time, and your video received millions of views." "I didn't get millions of anything. I just recorded what was in front of me." Elise Vargas testified next. Quinn suggested that her medical training caused her to interfere before she understood the police situation. "My training caused me to recognize a child in pain," Elise replied. "My eyes caused me to see that she had the walk signal." Agent Quinn described the collection and authentication of digital evidence. Anika Patel explained copied report language, though the judge limited how much statistical stop data the jury could hear. The most important exhibits required little interpretation. The bakery video showed the crossing from above. The body camera supplied Harlan's words. The phone records proved when he watched Keon's clip. The report showed what he wrote afterward. On the fourth day of trial, Tessa took the stand. She swore to tell the truth and adjusted the microphone with both hands. Camille sat motionless in the front row, her fingers locked together in her lap. Park began with ordinary questions. Tessa described Bellwether Pharmacy and the route home. She explained the pedestrian signal. Then Park asked what happened when Harlan got out of his car. "He told me to show my hands," she said. "I thought he could see them already. I held up the bag because I wanted him to know it was medicine." "What happened next?" "He told me to turn around. I asked why. Then he grabbed me." "How did it feel?" "At first I thought my wrist was going to break. Then the car burned my shoulder. I tried to lift my face from the window, but he pushed harder and said I was resisting." "Were you trying to get away?" "No. I didn't know how to do what he wanted because I couldn't move." Park paused. "Why did you tell him your mother would know?" "Because my mom knows the law. But mostly because she's my mom. When something bad happens, you're supposed to tell your mom." Several jurors looked toward Camille. Camille kept her eyes on Tessa. On cross-examination, Quinn's voice was gentle. "Tessa, you were frightened that day, weren't you?" "Yes." "And fear can make events seem longer or more forceful than they are." "Maybe." "You pulled your arm when Officer Harlan took your wrist, correct?" "My arm moved because he pulled it." "You tried to turn your head away from the vehicle. The window was hot. So you did move while he was trying to control you." Tessa looked at the judge, then back at Quinn. "I moved my face so it wouldn't burn. I wasn't trying to fight him." Quinn displayed a still frame in which Tessa's right hand was near the torn pharmacy bag. An officer seeing this for the first time would not know what was inside that bag, would he? He could have asked. That was not my question. No, he didn't know because he didn't ask. Quinn ended the examination soon afterward. Once Tessa left the witness box, Camille met her in a private hallway. They could not discuss testimony while the trial continued, so Camille simply opened her arms. Tessa stepped into them. "Did I do it right?" she whispered. "You told the truth. That's all I ever asked you to mean." The defense called a former police training instructor who said the control technique could be appropriate if an officer reasonably perceived resistance. On cross-examination, Park asked him to identify the moment in any video when Tessa threatened Harlan. The expert could not. Harlan then made the most dangerous choice of the trial. He testified. He told the jury he had feared Tessa would step back into traffic. He said the pharmacy bag could have contained a weapon. He described her questions as escalating non-compliance and claimed the crowd distracted him from hearing her complaint of pain. Park approached with Harlan's report. "You wrote that she suddenly entered the path of your vehicle." "Yes. The signal gave her permission to enter that crosswalk. Pedestrians still have to exercise caution. Your vehicle crossed the stop line, correct?" "Partially." "You wrote that her hands were concealed. Where are they concealed in the bakery video?" "The camera has a different angle. Your body camera had your angle. Her hands are visible there too, aren't they?" Harlan hesitated. At certain points, Park played the audio of Tessa saying, "You're hurting me." "You told dispatch no medical assistance was needed. Did you hear that statement?" There was a crowd yelling. Park played Harlan's personal phone video recorded after Tessa had left. "You said she'll be fine. That means you knew there was something she might need to recover from, doesn't it?" It was a figure of speech. Finally, Park displayed the time Harlan watched Keon's clip beside the time he submitted his report. "You saw her visible hands. You heard her complain of pain. You watched the video, and then you wrote that neither thing happened." "I wrote what I remembered from the encounter, not what the camera remembered." Quinn objected. The judge sustained it, but the sentence had already settled over the jury. Closing arguments took place on a Monday morning. Quinn reminded jurors that bad policing was not automatically criminal policing. He was correct, and Park acknowledged it. "This case is not criminal because the encounter looked bad," Park said. "It is criminal if the defendant knowingly used authority he did not lawfully possess, deliberately applied force. No reasonable need justified, and then falsified the record to protect himself." The Constitution does not stop at the edge of a police uniform. It follows a 12-year-old child into a crosswalk. The jury deliberated for 9 hours across 2 days. Tessa waited in a private room with Camille, playing a card game neither of them could follow. Each time footsteps passed the door, Camille looked up. On the second afternoon, a court officer entered. "We have a verdict." The courtroom filled in minutes. Harlan stood. Tessa sat beside a victim specialist with Camille on her other side. The foreperson found Harlan guilty on all 3 counts. He did not react at first. Then his shoulders dropped as if an invisible weight had finally reached him. The judge revoked his release and ordered him taken into custody, pending sentencing. A deputy stepped behind him and asked him to place his hands together. Tessa looked away. She did not want the image of handcuffs to become the part that made her feel better. Outside, reporters shouted questions. Camille gave only one answer. Today, a jury held one man accountable. Tomorrow, the work of making accountability ordinary continues. 3 months later, the sentencing hearing brought the story back to the question Tessa had asked from the beginning. Would Harlan go to prison? Before the judge imposed sentence, Tessa read a statement she had written herself. "You said I needed to learn how to behave," she told Harlan. "After that day, I was scared of sirens, crosswalks, and people who were supposed to help me. I kept thinking I had caused everything, because I asked why. I know now that asking why was not a crime. Walking home was not a crime. Being afraid when you hurt me was not resisting. I don't want you punished because my mother has an important job. I want the next kid's mother to matter, even if nobody knows her name. Harlan apologized to Tessa, but continued to describe the encounter as a mistake made under pressure. The judge said an apology without full recognition carried limited weight. He sentenced Harlan to 54 months in federal prison followed by supervised release and barred him from seeking law enforcement employment during that period. The state charges were resolved through a concurrent sentence and permanent surrender of his Maryland police certification. Colton lost his supervisory rank and certification. The state review led to reopening 11 complaints, new discipline procedures, and the appointment of a permanent independent monitor. Westbridge published stop data by officer and race, prohibited confidentiality provisions from concealing underlying public safety concerns, and created a hotline through which families could request immediate preservation of body camera and dispatch evidence. No reform arrived perfectly. The police union challenged some changes. City officials argued over cost. Officers complained that new paperwork punished the entire department for the conduct of a few. Captain Mora answered that documentation was not punishment, it was memory. And institutions without reliable memory repeated whatever they preferred to forget. 1 year after the incident, Tessa returned to Laurel and North Mercer. She did not go alone. Camille walked beside her. Elise waited outside the bakery with a new box of cupcakes. Keon leaned against his bicycle. Omar Langston stood with his mother near the curb. The city had repainted the crosswalk and installed a leading pedestrian interval that gave walkers several seconds before vehicles received a green light. Tessa pressed the button. The white walking figure appeared. For a moment, she could not move. The sun reflected from a parked car, and her shoulder remembered heat. Camille did not pull her forward. She simply waited. "We can turn back," Camille said. Tessa shook her head. She stepped into the crosswalk. Nobody cheered until she reached the other side. Then Elise clapped. Keon rang the bell on his bicycle, and Tessa laughed so suddenly that tears came with it. The moment did not erase what had happened. It gave the intersection a second memory. Later that afternoon, Tessa and Camille stood outside the federal courthouse after the final restitution documents were filed. The crowd was gone. There were no microphones, no signs, and no cameras waiting for a statement. The stone steps held the day's fading warmth. "Do you think he understood at the end?" Tessa asked. Camille considered the question. "I don't know. Courts can require consequences. They cannot force understanding." Then what was all of this for? So the truth would be recorded. So he could not use his power without answering for it. So the people who protected him had to change what they were doing. And so you would know that what happened was not your fault. Tessa slipped her hand into her mother's. "I knew that last part already." Camille smiled. "You know it now. That is different." Behind them, the courthouse doors began to close for the evening. Their heavy hinges moved slowly. Then the locks met with a deep metallic sound. A year earlier, Vance Harlan had believed a uniform, a practiced report, and the silence of a frightened child would protect him. He had mistaken control for truth and authority for immunity. He had never asked who Tessa's mother was. But in the end, Camille's title was not what convicted him. The witnesses who refused to leave, the cameras that preserved what he denied, the records that revealed what the department had buried, and Tessa's own steady voice had done that. Mother and daughter descended the courthouse steps together. The doors closed behind them, not as a symbol of secrecy, but as the final sound of consequence catching up with a man who had once been certain it never would.